There you go. Welcome everybody to our Dear Go Speaker Series, which was started a few years ago actually and referred to as Tech Night. The idea was to bring in folks from the entrepreneurial community, leaders and founders, to just kind of talk about how I built this. And so once we launched Dear Go Labs, we folded it into our programming. It's the Dear Go Speaker Series. So we've had Chuck Donnelly from Rockstep Solutions. He was a Dear Go Speaker Series presenter. So this event is a free event, but it's free for you anyway, because you're in Dear Go Labs, of course. But it's sponsored by the Harold Alfond Institute for Business Innovation at Thomas College, Valley Beverage, Bricks, and CGI. So it's a monthly event, and this will continue on even after you guys leave. So you can always come back, but you can always come back anyway. So tonight we have someone from STARC Systems. STARC Systems builds temporary containment units, and our guest will tell you all about them. And our guest is Chris McKenzie. And a little about Chris: he loves long walks on the beach, stargazing, haiku poetry. Oh wait, wrong profile.
That's a wrong profile.
Oh, okay.
She did ask me to do a profile, and I kind of colored it up a little bit.
Oh God, I've known Chris for a long time. He's the VP of Business Development for STARC, and he is a big reason for their meteoric success. Honestly, he's also been a longtime mentor for Top Gun. He was a Mentor of the Year. He's incredible at sales and business development. So you're going to learn a lot from him. And so I'm going to turn it over.
How do you follow that? Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And to help set the stage a little bit, sales and STARC are my passion, right? I've been selling for a very long time. And one thing I want to make clear regarding sales, and I think all of you know that if you haven't been involved with it, sales is a science, just like accounting, just like any other profession. You really have to continue to hone in on it. And the pain of the customer changes quite a bit. And we're going to dive into a little bit of that. No, by no means are we going to nail down, get past sales 101 here. And many of you are already well past where I'm going to go. On the other hand, what I'd like to be able to do, I've been asked to talk about STARC a little bit, explain what we did, how we got there, and where we are at this point, in addition to combining it with a little bit of sales boot camp, if I could. And of course, what I'm selling and to whom I'm selling, and the audience, a lot of that is consistent for what you need, meaning pain resolution, finding how you're going to help the people's lives get a little better. On the other hand, we're a manufacturer. So the approach may be different than a service and or an advisement and or another type of product or food service. Nonetheless, I will tell you that sales athleticism transcends all industries. And I'm a firm believer in that. I've seen it. I've been involved with an ISP that we started up and sold just after 8 months to Fairpoint Communications. And I got to tell you, I can't spell ISP. I'm not a technologist, right? But to let you know, the sales athleticism does prevail, all right? But what I do want to talk about first and foremost is STARC Systems and how we came to be. So what is STARC? How many people have even heard of STARC Systems? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. So there's the three of us. This is 2015. We were in the basement of the Holiday Inn trying to drum up business. The person in the middle is a visionary, Tim Hebert. He owns a major construction company in the state of Maine and was always perplexed by the amount of time, effort, money spent in temporary containment. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that. The gentleman on the right is the mechanical engineer, whom I call the professor. And of course, the guy on the left is the evangelical, right? So he would go out and actually peddle the products to healthcare facilities, contractors around the country, quite frankly. Go ahead. So what is indeed containment? STARC Systems is an acronym: simple, telescopic, airtight, reusable containment. I will tell you, in the early days, on my presentations to customers, I had Tony Stark up there for obvious reasons, right? They would remember my name when I left. But when they sent me an email, they would say, "Oh, tell me more about your STARC walls," and they use the K instead of the C. But they knew the name, right? So, but containment. What is it? The real vocabulary word you want to know is what is containment? Go ahead. Whenever there is any restoration or renovation that takes place in a healthcare facility or any commercial facility whatsoever that's occupied, contractors will quarantine the dust and debris from emanating down a hallway. The reason it's most important in healthcare facilities, because if a mold spore or dust particle leaves a healthcare facility, it leaves a job site, emanates down a hallway, it can actually kill a patient with a compromised immune system. That's That's called a healthcare acquired infection. So you go in the hospital for appendicitis and you end up with MRSA and die. There are about 100,000 deaths a year for healthcare acquired infection. So essentially, containment is a common practice in healthcare. So you take a look here, and you can see that there's an open space. I'm going to show you what we do with that space. The traditional method, go ahead, of building that containment is with a sheetrock wall. Contractors actually build a wall at the edge of the project before they begin the project. They really need to seal it all in, and then it needs to be negative pressure. So keep this in mind, 100 feet of wall will take about 2 days. Go ahead. The problem with drywall is it's dusty, it's dirty, it's noisy. Patients aren't very happy with it, obviously, and it becomes non-biodegradable waste when it gets thrown away. And on the right, some of you see these plastic sheets around. That is hospitals don't allow that anymore, but in commercial applications, sometimes you will see that. But obviously that becomes non-biodegradable waste as well, and it becomes very costly. Go ahead. So the inventor of STARC Systems created a prefabricated modular telescopic panelized system that works like a Lego system by lift and drop and connecting them all together. You can formulate an airtight seal in a room. So it's prefabricated is all it is. They extend from 6'10" to 10'3", and they just slide up to the ceiling after you put them in, right? Works like a storm window. It's a very simple concept. Now I could get into the over-engineering on how we design and what goes into it. I won't do that at this point. But essentially, imagine we built a containment system created by Tim Hebert and Bruce Bigford. They're the two co-founders that solves that particular problem. So instead of taking 2 days to put up 100 feet, put up 100 feet in an hour. Go ahead. And I won't get into all the mechanics of it. Go ahead. That just shows you a little bit of the engineering. But this is what the walls look like when they're up. Essentially, it looks like a real wall. Go ahead. So here's an illustration. If you would push play. And this is how they go together. I was going to bring the walls in today, but Susan wouldn't let me build the wall. So. With nothing but an Allen wrench, two guys bring a panel out. This is the life-size panel, obviously. They squeeze it to the ceiling. With nothing but a quarter turn, they lock it in place. You bring the next panel over, and with nothing more than a lift and drop, the panels go together, they create an airtight seal between them, they squeeze into the ceiling, and that is how you install 100 feet of wall in just an hour. So you can imagine the advantages we had from a sales perspective. And I'll get a little bit in regards to what some of the pain was that we were solving when we went out in the marketplace. Because remember, at the time, we had one seller for the whole country, right? And two guys in the manufacturing, which was sometimes me and Bruce as well. Go ahead. You might want to hit, there you go. And by the way, I just want to show you this. One great thing about our product is it looks beautiful when it's up. So here's a contractor who sent me a picture. He used STARC on the left. His competitor was using plastic across the hallway. You can imagine that hospital, after that project was done, made every contractor use STARC. That's a big part of our growth, by the way, despite the cost. Go ahead. So here's the, we talked a little bit about the history. Our first installation was in Central Maine Medical Center, right in Auburn, Lewiston. And then shortly thereafter, Maine Med, go ahead. And we start growing. And right about then, I think I joined Top Gun and started working with Susan. But that's the whole company right there. We got a brand new hospice machine. We're very excited. We started in a 3,000 square foot place. You mentioned the 1,700. 3,000 square foot facility. We're now in a 50,000 square foot hangar. Starts. Go ahead. And then in 2017, with the graces of our success, a group by the name of Blue Heron Capital invested $3.5 million on us. So from there, I go and hire a sales force. We get a professional CEO, we form a board, and all of a sudden now we have all sorts of sales and marketing money to get the word out. We knew we had a provable product, but then we had to go now sell the rest of the country on the concept of prefabricated modular telescopic containment. Go ahead. And now we're in a 50,000 square foot facility. We're in 5 countries, 90 employees, and we're sold in all 50 states, right? So, and we're doubling sales year over year. And so it's an investor sweetheart deal, and we can start getting into the hows and whys and how we succeeded about it. Go ahead. One of the neat things about our product is the customer base, right? What the challenge was, and you won't get into early adopters and sales difficulty, but this practice was countering a decades-old practice of installing sheetrock. So if you've ever been involved with changing behavior, it's more than just selling product, right? The product was clearly superior. It was 5 times more expensive than the way they did it. So how the heck did we break that ice, right? And not only that, but clearly it was a superior methodology, but we were changing, again, behavior. So the person to whom I was speaking had to be able to go speak to 10 or 20 installers as well and convince them this is a great way to go. And I had a challenge with the unions as well. The carpenter unions. Now we're guest speakers with the carpenter unions. But in the early days, they did not like a different one. So it became quite a challenge. But nobody was really embraced it at first. So it took us a while to ramp up. Take a look on the left, some of the now leading healthcare facilities in the country and the world demand STARC Systems. We're very fortunate. Better salespeople than me. In the middle, some of the major contractors in the US are now using STARC Systems. This isn't to say that these folks have standardized on STARC. So I don't want you to think that we've hit our pinnacle yet. I'm going to get into that. But the neat thing about it is many of these contractors are now taking this into other facilities like airports, VAs, colleges, and universities as well, because it works in commercial applications as well as medical.
What about applications?
Absolutely. In fact, my first major installation, over $40,000, which at the time kept the lights on for us, was in Greenville, North Carolina, in a kitchen for a medical facility. It was a cafeteria, and they were ripping out the kitchen, so they separated the kitchen from the rest of the folks, so they could still eat there while these guys remodel the whole kitchen. That's the neat thing. The term is occupied renovation. So renovation while there's still people getting a job done, whether it be patients in healthcare and or of course law offices or cafeterias. And we ended up on Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies 3 years in a row now, including this year. And we've won some innovation awards as well. For a simple wall. It's an erector set, right? Go ahead. And we've had a lot of supporters along the way, including our investors, including our capital. If you've never been to Brunswick Landing, I think you have, and some of the other folks here have. And Sasha and I are actually neighbors, actually in the same building, in the same hallway. So you can imagine those two egos walking back and forth along the hallway. So Brunswick Landing is a great place to start a business, starting of course with Tech Place, where we started in a closet, and now we're in a hangar. Obviously MTI, Greenlight Maine, we participated in it quite a bit. The Candy Queen beat me as the best of last year, as a matter of fact. And but Sasha was involved with that as well for the best of. So the three of us kind of know each other pretty well. But again, we've had a lot of partnerships, and all of you are familiar with all these logos, I'm sure. But these are great assets for early stage companies in so many different ways. Go ahead. So you can machine gun through these a little bit. Lobbies, you can see how many versatility surgery units, airports. And these are, by the way, these pictures are not marketing pictures. We use them as marketing pictures, but these are taken by contractors who send them into us, who are so proud of how good their product looks out there. Corporate offices, if you stop right there for a minute, you can see that one doesn't hit the ceiling. It's a freestanding wall. That's a Pfizer lobby. And once we got into Pfizer, then all the Pfizers all over the country started using our product, right? As a result of a quote unquote best practice. Go ahead. Life sciences, go ahead. So, I mean, it gets a little boring. You can apply it almost anywhere. You can keep going. But you can stop right here. COVID. What happened when COVID hit? Well, think about what these walls did. You can all of a sudden form a quick negative pressure room in a lobby of a hospital. At COVID, we moved from a 25,000 square foot facility to a 50,000 square foot facility in just 30 days because the demand catapulted by creating negative pressure. Many hospitals already had the product on site for their traditional renovation project, so they put it into play. But there was so much panic and demand, as you can well imagine. And on top of that, we of course had our regular business going on as well. Yes, sir.
Did you have to engineer quickly the roof for that to keep the ceiling? That's your roof?
We did have a ceiling. That's a great question. We did have a ceiling capacity, but in most cases, our product went all the way straight up to the ceiling. It goes from 6 foot 10 to 10 foot 3. But we use this as an illustration to show that there was a lot of gymnasium type isolation rooms that they wanted, we were able to accommodate that as well. So, and again, I love to say we pivoted during COVID, we went from making purses to respirators and face masks. We didn't have to do that. Our product worked just the way it was. We were very fortunate, right? In addition to being a traditional renovation restoration project. So the key was to get out with these infection preventionists, infection professionals around the country and convince them this was a better way to go. We had to do that really fast, right? Go ahead. So the way it works is people will send us in a drawing. And the neat thing is if you take a look at the left, that's like a 6-phase project happening in a particular facility. They only have to buy enough wall for the largest phase. And then they can move them around to each of the other phases throughout the project. And we'll send them an illustration of what their project's gonna look like when it's gone. Yes, sir?
Who buys them, the contractor or the actual hospital?
Both. In many cases, the contractor will buy it and use it as a sales advantage for themselves. If you hire us, Mr. and Mrs. Hospital, by all means, we have a superior insulation product and a renovation product. And by the way, it dampens noise as well. So patient satisfaction levels are higher, right? It sounds like I got all the answers to silver bullet. That wasn't the case 6 years ago. People looked at me cross-eyed when I came in with this concept. Go ahead.
I have a question. So do you recycle them or, you put them up and then after the renovation, then do you go back and pick them up or what happens to them after?
The customer owns them. So they take them and put them in inventory. The neat thing about projects is you could either have a 6-phase project like what I just showed you. So what they bought stays in the building. And in many hospitals, there's so many renovation jobs, those walls never leave that hospital. I mean, Master owns 1 million square feet, right? And there's always something going on down there. So they just keep moving them and moving. In most cases, I'm gonna say 80% of our revenue are contractors, but 90% of the work is being done in healthcare. Does that make sense?
Do you have a line of business where you can charge to train the hospital staff if they only?
It's part of the price. We go in and train them. But, and we make it seem like it's so sophisticated. It takes you 10 minutes to learn how this stuff goes together. You saw how the lift and drop? Those 2 guys who did it are not carpenters or contractors. They work in our factory.
I noticed a lot of drop ceilings in those
Yes.
hospitals. Isn't the negative pressure that stops stuff from going above the drop ceiling?
The negative pressure prevents stuff from going above the drop ceiling. It prevents anything from emanating outside that enclosure.
I'm just looking so they don't mess with the ceiling.
That's right. It goes right up and stops right at the ceiling. Now, there are some applications where they need to go all the way to the deck. And then we've got some accommodations and accessories that will help them do that. But generally speaking, you can create negative pressure. For those of you that don't know, what negative pressure means, behind those walls, you can create a seal where air is going away from outside and keeping dust and debris from even going out further. That's the whole part of containment, right? And they have to exit out. We have all sorts of accessories to accommodate anything. I could have shown 100 slides on projects, but there are opportunities for, even when there's no ceiling, or no ceiling, there's ways to seal it off
And have like municipalities invested in it at all?
They're not in the top 10, frankly. We have done schools, colleges and universities who have a lot more revenue and endowments certainly are doing it. And they're making their contractors do it because students complain, right? We have done state government buildings during renovation, but primarily healthcare, commercial, airports. And now the restoration industry is taking off on this, as you can well imagine. The Servcos, the DKIs of the world, first on sites are deciding that this works if they have to, say a kitchen burns out, flares out. Instead of making everybody leave the house, they use these, people can stay in the home. And so they save the insurance money from the hotels, right? And again, I'd love to tell you we were brilliant. We thought of all these applications and uses. The customers did it. We just identified the customers. We let them take off of it, right? Go ahead. Oh, by the way, no, stop there. I'm sorry. We started with the one that you see most is the real wall, which is in the middle. We now make 3 different models, by the way. The early stage of this company, we were in a decision logic where Bruce, Tim, and I were talking about: are we going to be a wall company, or are we going to be a negative pressure company? Which means you get negative pressure machines and all sorts of other accessories and things on. At this point, it looks like we're going to be a wall company. So we've got a more economical one made on the left, same features and benefits, warranted for a couple of years. It just only has a single skin versus the real wall, which has three layers on it, sound attenuation, a lot more quiet. And then the one on the right is the industry's first ever 1-hour fire rated wall, which is just coming out now. which is taking the world by storm. So the neat thing is with the success of the early product, we can reinvest back into the company and R&D, and we develop other products that are just not yet available. So we've got like 3 angles going right now.
Would you, to tackle that concept of being the negative pressure equipment company as well, so having a second line of business, would you need an investor to help capitalize that whole new branch?
Probably not. We've done pretty well. We wouldn't have to. I mean, certainly would help, but there's a lot of them out there. And, you know, one of our newest customers, Sunbelt Rentals, now buys our product by the thousands of feet and installs it themselves, and they charge rent for the product. So they'll come install it. It's a brand new world for us, getting the rental. It's very interesting. But you go into their facility and they have 5,000 negative air machines, for example, of all brands, 5,000 negative air machines. Yeah, so they've got all the accessories and things associated with it. So I don't think we're going to change the world by creating or inventing or distributing another negative air machine. Right.
That's interesting that's how disruptive innovation works, is you nibble away at the edges of the giant players market and you come up with an innovative version of the machine that does one thing well for your wall. And then over the years, you begin to encroach on the incumbent's territory. Meanwhile, the market needs recognize your system is suddenly simpler than all the 5,000 versions of the machines out there. And then now you suddenly erupt in this wall.
Good point.
You know what I mean? But
Good point. The neat thing about this, there were no incumbents. Believe it or not, you know, that was the part of the sales process I'm going to get into, that nobody had, these guys hadn't seen it. I mean, every contractor I spoke with would, why didn't I think of that, right? It's so simple. The reason they didn't think of it is because if you can imagine managing a project for a healthcare renovation, think of all the moving parts, all the pieces, all the problems, all the personnel, all the safety issues. This was a problem, but it wasn't in the top 10. It was just a necessary evil. Tim Hebert and Bruce Bickford, the co-founders, decided, well, it's a problem enough that let's find a cure for it. And then my job, when I started going out there, is making that problem be in the top 2 or 3, right? That's called pain resolution, and that's professional sales. Because if you're selling something that doesn't solve a problem that they've got, what are you doing? And how do you find out what their problem is? I'm going to get into that a little bit. Go ahead. Now, a new wind at our sails, right? You've heard of the supply chain issues. You've heard of the labor shortage issues. Well, guess what? McKinsey has a new pitch. Not only do we have the healthcare piece, and goes up fast and looks good, sound attenuation, and it's quiet to go install. But by the way, with one SKU, you have a whole wall. You don't have to go to the supply chain and worry about 50 different parts and pieces that half of them may not be on time. If you own 100 feet of this, you got a whole wall right there. You don't have to worry about that. You talk about labor, pricing, raising prices. Yes, this is expensive up front, but you're done. So there's no variability in your cost from that point forward. And guess what? Because our wall goes up 100 feet an hour, you kind of overcome the labor shortage, right? So now your labor can be spent working on the actual project more than it is building a wall and then demolishing a wall and taking it to the dump. Make sense?
Have you had issues getting aluminum in the last couple of years?
It's more expensive, but no, we haven't had problems getting it. Now, during COVID, that's a great question. During COVID, we changed our forecast dramatically and bought to that new forecast, right? I mean, and once we got up and running, you got to remember, we were tens of thousands of dollars our first year. We're in tens of millions of dollars in revenue now, right? And all that, 95% of that is from outside of Maine, and that's coming into the state. So that's another benefit, right? We got 80 employees. So we are able to buy ahead and get many months worth. And the neat thing about our stuff, even though we're moved to 3 products versus just 1, is none of it spoils. So as long as we don't redesign the product, right? So if for whatever reason, some of it, there's some slowdown for any particular reason, we can still use the product. Make sense? We hate storing it and having that kind of an inventory. But, and that's one of the things of joining, by the way, of joining with Blue Heron, having a professional CEO, a professional VP of manufacturing. They are much better than we were at choreographing all the inventory and the management and the expenditures and things like that, and managing. That's a big piece of success for us.
I wanted you to clarify that, and that happened in year 2,
Which one?
2017. hiring your investor,
The investor came in late 2017, that would have been our third year.
Your third year.
Yeah, right. And we were getting a lot of attention, as Susan can attest to the fact, really around Maine, it was kind of a little sexy little manufacturing startup, and we had some nice victories, but the real revenue started really hitting. And the neat thing is our 85% reorder rate. So once I sold somebody, I could leave. I didn't have to go back for every order. They knew how to get it, and that we can move on to new fronts. Make sense? Okay. Go ahead. Here's the great part. We've done research, and despite our year-over-year growth, 90% of the free world who could use our product still don't know we exist. We got a long way to go, right? And that's good for the future of what the future investor, or more employees, more growth. Also, it's a great future for this company, and our forecasts are very strong as well. And our customers are billions of dollar customers. I mean, they are very, very large customers. You don't know the Skanskas and Turners, maybe. You may not know who DPR is as a major construction firm, but they're minimum $5 billion. Sunbelt is a $9 billion company who just joined in our ranks as being a rental company. So a lot of resources, and not only that, but your customers want you to succeed as well. So if they have some valuable insight or have some opportunity for us to do better, faster, quicker, we communicate with them a lot as well.
Well, that's impressive. You've got wells on tap, ready to go. I was curious, did I hear you correctly when you said you're 4 times more expensive than the existing solutions? And you managed to sell that to a
5
number
times.
12 problem. Now it's 5 times. You managed to sell that as a substitute for the traditional way to a pain point that had been like number 12 on their list.
That's right.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, and I'll get into that on the sales side, right? Because, I mean, in sales class, to me, there's so many subjects we can hit. I think for me, if I'm ever coaching, or whenever I'm coaching sales or working with my new sales force, I want to coach them on the line of questioning. And because you are not going to appeal to anyone until you understand what their pain is first. I mean, we all think we do. I'm going to get into it. I'm very passionate about this. So let's stay with the product right now. Good job. And this is like the opportunity, and I use this for every sales rep and every business investor that we talk to. What you see on the top is where we are now, certain STARC customers. But you take a look now, we created this iceberg back in 2017. Take a look what's there, pandemic preparedness. We kind of had some foresight that should there be another outbreak of any type, this stuff will work great, and it did. But we still haven't touched what can happen in the military. The government's going to stockpile miles of this stuff at some point because of COVID, right? You're just going to have to. And then actually Senator Collins has helped us incorporate some language in the bill that would request that, along with some other stockpile. So we've got a lot of things going on: resident rental renovation, restoration. The rental market is now catching on fire for us, in addition to the traditional business, which is up top. Go ahead. Some customer comments. I think you get a sense that, and these names, these companies would, every one of those, if they were in Maine right now, would be bigger than any company in Maine, right? Who buy our stuff. But I want to again emphasize the fact, because McCarthy and Gilbane use my product, by no means does that mean they standardize on the product. I can go to a project in Boston, Gilbane uses none of it. I go to Nebraska, they got 500 feet of my stuff. Those guys don't talk to each other. That's my job, right? Project managers on these projects and jobs work within their own world. Our job is to get the success of one and spread the word nationwide. Go ahead. And then again, take a look how good it looks, right? And then behind there is an operating room. So you got negative pressure and everything going on. So the looks was a big part of the selling. Go ahead. Okay, now my other favorite subject, sales. How many of you contend, wow, how many of you contend that you are professional salespeople?
Yeah, we all
That's
are.
good. Yeah. Well, the good thing was one time I did this at Top Gun class, and somebody, yeah, I can do this. So we, of course, we brought it up and we're able to illustrate that they weren't. That's all I'm saying. Because I want people to respect the science of sales, the professional sales. It is the same as accounting and teaching and other things you need to keep up on. You really do. People feel that if I have the technical knowledge and I'm able to articulate everything that my stuff will do, I'm a salesperson, which is, we think that we know it's not true. right? It's not what you know, it's how you present it and how you pull it out of your customer. So anyway, this is just some examples, but heartbreak and adversity interrupted by brief moments of elation. Make no mistake, despite STARC Systems' success and the tens of millions of dollars of sales that we generate, you can imagine all the no's I heard. Not just the pitch of the product, imagine getting an appointment. Hey, my name's Chris, I manufacture a prefabricated modular telescopic wall that's 5 times more expensive than the way you do it now. Can you see me Wednesday or Thursday? Right? You think I got a no after that? Needed a new approach. Honest to God, one time, a guy came into his office on a site in Boston, and I was in his office with a life-size wall I'd already erected in his office. All right. Now, there was a reason. I'm just not an obnoxious nut like that. There was a reason I felt I was able to do that, but I'll get into that some other time. Go ahead. This is something I really want you to take a look at and apply some science to in your mind. This is a sales difficulty chart. Now, the reason I present this is because I think all of us know there are easier sales and more difficult sales, right? And there are reasons why some things are more difficult than others, whether it be cost, whether it be new, whether it be lack of familiarity. So the way we do this is if you take a look at the bottom left-hand quadrant, selling an existing product to existing customer is the easiest type of sale. Does that make sense to everyone? Because it's just a reorder. You're not really selling at that point unless your product really screws up. Then you got to go back and resell it, right? But somebody who already knows your product, an existing customer buying an existing product is the easiest on the sales difficulty chart. Take a look at the upper right, the most difficult. You're selling a new product to a new customer. That is indeed the most difficult of all sales. Does that make sense? Right? The logic is there. And I think all of us are in that upper right-hand quadrant, are we not? Some of us are more expensive, some of us are different, some of us are trying to get somebody else to change something. You're all getting somebody to do something that they haven't done before. And it may be better, faster, quicker than the way they do it now, or it may be something they've never done before. And you're getting them to change their behavior and practice, right? The most difficult thing is changing behavior. I've been separating people from their money for years in a legal way. But to get them to reorder and do it over and over and over again, right, is a key. It's a magic. It's very important. So I want you to know that your job is really hard. And for those of us, and many of us in the entrepreneurial world are not professional salespeople. I shouldn't even say professional. We're not even salespeople. It's not even in our DNA. Why? What do we do? What do we do when we finally get an audience with our new thing?
Tell them all about it right away.
I call it show up and throw up. Right? Because go ahead. We're so excited. Go ahead. We get by. High value sellers. And I'm going to get into that. Go ahead. Emotional quotient is important. But your job as a professional seller, as a professional entrepreneur, and make no mistake, even though you don't consider yourself a salesperson, you are. You are the ambassador of your company. You are a professional salesperson always. And keep that in mind. You're certainly key to generate revenue, but we are professional problem solvers. But you're not a problem solver unless what?
You know what the problem is.
How do you uncover that problem, right? Now, I'm boiling it down. I'm making it really simple, but these are some of the real knickknacks of this profession. Go ahead. First impressions. Things are a little more casual today than they are, but I do bring this up, and I'll tell you why. Because most of us are in a high value sale. What do I mean by high value? That means something I'm going to be working with you even after I buy from you. You're going to have to come on site. I'm going to have to contend with you. It's a high value sale. It's not a single transaction where I'm going to sell you this Allen wrench. You're going to give me $10 and I'll never see you again. That's different. I could be a complete jerk and you still might need this and you'll take it and go. But if I'm just not presentable to you in whatever way, and I don't mean just looks, am I likely to form a relationship with you that I'm going to live with for many months, if not years? So keep that in mind. Behavior, attire, presentation, all matter. And I'm not telling you to be buttoned up and all that are stuffy. But the point is, this matters. Part of value sales, and it's unwritten in most sales books, is the way this person feels about your presence. That matters. Go ahead. but don't show up and throw up. I got a slide for it. Is that good? And the problem is, and I learned this at Top Gun, I learned it when I was at STARC, and I learned it out in the entrepreneurial world that we became a member of, is that people have so many great things to tell about what you do, that your enthusiasm exceeds your recipient's enthusiasm, right? And you're in their face, and you're hitting them 1,000,000 miles a minute with machine gun features and benefits. Why their life will be better, because have you even found out what their life is about? How can you solve their problem if you haven't performed the line of questioning that helps you uncover that? I'm not going to get into all that because that is a real deep science. But remember, and bear in mind that you cannot solve your customer's challenge without knowing what it is. And not just knowing what it is, but its effect on them. How does that make you feel? How does that manage, increase your man hours? How does that deal with energy costs? Whatever it is you're selling. How about your time savings? How does that do your time? How much time does that cost you to do that? And again, I'm oversimplifying. These are one-on-one things, but I'm trying to create the concept that says, I get it. The line of questioning, go ahead. Line of questioning. Is there a volume on this computer? Try it.
Maybe.
Have you guys seen this?
Rockwell Automation's reconfigurable. Now, basically, the only new principle involved is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it's produced by the monial interaction of magnetoreluctance and capacitive directance. The original machine had a base plate of prefabulated annuli surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing in such a way that the two swerving bearings were in a direct line with a panometric fan. The lineup consisted simply of 6 hydrocoptic marsal vanes, so fitted to the ambifation lunar wing shaft that side fumbling was effectively prevented. The main winding was of the normal Lotus-O deltoid type placed in panendermic semi-boloid slots of the stator. Every 7th conductor being connected by a non-reversible Tremie pipe to the differential girdle spring on the up end of the gram meters. Moreover, whenever fluorescent score motion is required, it may also be employed in conjunction with a drawn reciprocation dingle arm to reduce sinusoidal declination.
Jingle arms.
The retroencabulator has now reached a high level of development, and it's being successfully used in the operation of Milford Tramiums. It's available soon wherever Rockwell Automation products are sold.
You can go to the next one. You get the point, right? Obviously, that was a line of questioning. Was it really intended to be a sales pitch? But it really kind of was, right? I showed this to one of the engineers in our back of our factory.
Rockwell Automation's
Keep going. There we go. Stop right there. That's good. And I showed this to one of our engineers, and he goes, "That's perfectly reasonable," right? So the difference between an engineer and me, right? And thank God for the engineers, because we wouldn't have this stuff, right? So nobody would ever ask me to invent anything, but if there's a market, we'll find a customer for it, right? That's our position as professional sellers. So what are problem solvers? The #1 feature I look for in a potential seller is a listening skill. You have to be curious to be a good listener, and you have to ask excellent questions. So if any of you, and I'm not going to go through it now, but go back through some of the conversations you've had with prospects, potential investors, people you're recruiting, employees even. Don't think that's not a sales job, right? Authentic sales job. I mean, you got to present your company in a positive way, and what it's going to be when it grows up, it's all very cool stuff. But that's selling, right? Promoting your company. But these are problem solvers features that really, when I work with sellers, I go through all of these in a very intense academic way, because they are components of a professional sales skill set that are mission critical for succeeding. And to your point, how the heck does someone make someone buy something? Yeah, they would spend 10 grand on a project. With me, they spent 50, right? So I better find a way to position this 50 grand as money well spent, right? And it's not because I need the sale, although I did, to keep the lights on. It was to make their company more profitable. I can spending 5 times more money make that company more profitable. That's the game, right? That's what we're all about. And we were able to go through that chess match. But just knowing these features of a problem solver does not make them so. You practice them. They're all skills. These are truly professional skills. And you don't have to be a professional but you do want to be adequate at it. And you're not going to get there, and you're not going to move your product unless you really know how your product or service solves or fixes something for them. Right? That makes sense? Kind of states the obvious, right? Go ahead. And you guys already did CRM, right? Last week, a couple weeks ago. So you get a sense, and it's not unusual. You almost need 10,000 prospects to have 15 sales. That's a lot of work. Not the fun part of the work, right? But the math is kind of like that. Now, it'll change per industry, per business, per resolution, per season. There are all sorts of other things that'll have an impact on that. Your sales ability, right? What is your sales ability? I want my sales ability to be so strong that I'm not only closing 15 per 10,000 leads, I'm closing 55. Right? I'm going to turn more leads into sales than an average seller. And that's always the goal. We're always very competitive as people are. But in some cases, competitive is part of survival, which indeed is a part of professional sales. Go ahead. I'm going to recommend a book to you. It is, for me, and I won't get into all the details of the most scientific application of sales data I've ever seen. And this is based on tens of thousands of high-value sales calls. It's called Spend Selling. Spend is an acronym for situation, problem, implication, need. It's a line of questioning is all it is. And it'll make you think. And you won't always nail it. I'm not going to ask you to memorize any of it. But if you really want to at least either A, understand the delta between where you are and what sales is, or at least try to practice some of the things in there, you'll indeed increase your closing rate. I promise you that. You won't be surprised. It's not magic. There's a million CDs out there. There's a million other self-learning videos out there. That's a good read. And it's based on tens of thousands of sales calls. And essentially, one of the best lessons that you'll ever get out of this, and I've always believed this, is those who close less, close more. Do not try to verbally manipulate your customer at any given time. Gee, you want me there Thursday or Friday? I don't want you there at all. Right? So is the brown one better, or would you like the white? I don't want any of them. Right? And this gets around all that. But trying to close, especially intelligent customers, which all your customers are, is still verbal manipulation is not the way to go. But negotiation is. That's a different story.
Since we get at that idea that techniques are what cause, like sort of manipulative techniques that sales become known for, car dealers or car dealers.
That's right. Well, here's the problem. And plaid coats, white shoes, and all those other. Everything works in sales sometimes. Nothing works all the time. So what happens, to your point, is somebody will get lucky, tripped over themselves, and get an order. They'll go back and think that was the best way to do it. They'll use it for every other sales situation, right? As opposed to what you really ought to do is when you come back from a sales situation, is take notes, digest, do an autopsy of that, especially if it didn't go well. So you can begin to continue to improve yourself in sales. Make sense? And these are the different stages within spend that I won't get into all the academics in there. If you get the book, I think you'd be fascinated by the academics of dissecting tens of thousands of sales calls and tens of thousands of companies. And most of the senior leaders of those companies just felt that their sellers should be closing more. But if you've ever tried to be closed, I'm sure all of us have tried to be closed, it's obnoxious. And I don't really want to work with that person any longer. I'm more like a bullfighter, kind of away when it comes, right? But you make them want to come, right? How are you going to make that red cape work and make them want to come? That's the magic, right? It really is. Go ahead. Again, just remember, when we go into a room, we're meeting somebody for the first time, and I'm talking about a traditional sales call, not something you've known for years. But what are we thinking of? We think about ourselves, right? Human nature. I would look at my shoes tied, my hair combed, not mine. What's so funny about that? So, but what you really should be doing is be thinking about the person. That's the emotional quotient. What is their issue? What is their problem? How are you going to get there faster, quicker, better? How are you going to make their business world better with what your solution is? And the only way you know that is ask questions, right? Be curious and be sincerely interested in them. People want to work with people who are interested in them, right? So you're not just selling a wall, you're selling a relationship. Now, I'm not talking about a dating site, but I am talking about the fact that you're gonna be back and you belong to a credible company, you're responsible for a credible product, and I wanna work with you because you're credible over an extended period of time. So keep all that in mind. And the best way to uncover their needs is, of course, is a line of questioning. And the book kind of covers in that as well. Of course, I'm always available to help you with certain situations by any means. If you say, well, here's a customer situation and here's what they have to spend. See, I was just dealing with somebody the other day who has a problem that what they're selling is a better solution and it's only 5 cents per unit more expensive than what they're using now. So the first question I asked them was, how will implementing your solution change their world? Think about that. It's one thing to have the solution, but how do we implement it? Well, the person didn't have the answer to that. That's what you have to ask. You have to know. So you can resolve and turn around and say, I'll parachute in. I'm going to help you implement this program. Or it's easy to implement, and this is how you do it. So that unknown and fear is gone. That doubt is gone. But you need to uncover. It's more than just the widget and the cost. There's a lot more involved with implementing your new solutions. And of course, all of us are startups, right? It's a risk. So you're asking them to take a risk on you. Now, certainly your job is to make them more sure that that's less of a risk than you think. And this is why. So obviously facts. Go ahead. We won't go into all the academics at this point. Go ahead. Keep going. One thing I will tell you though, positive attitude. You've heard this, Norman Vincent Peale, Dale Carnegie, all this other fun stuff, right? You remember the sales psychology of being, you want people glad you're in the room. Posture, demeanor, attitude is all a big part of sales because you hear no 6,000 times a week. If you don't, you're not selling, right? So it's easy to get beaten down on this and you can look defeated and beat it. But this natural reaction on the left, animals do this when they're successful, right? It's an involuntary reaction. Woo! Don't be afraid to do that before you go in. I'm not kidding. And when you stand there and this positive, go back one slide, can you? Go back and watch Amy Cuddy on TEDx, right? She gets into body posture and the psychology associated with body posture. It's a great presentation. It's fun to watch. And it's not insignificant. And she'll break down that next slide very, very well for you. But there's so many non-verbal components of sales. You won't believe how many non-verbal components of sales. We're always thinking about what we have to say, but what are you observing? What are you seeing? What are they observing? What are they seeing? And what do you think they're thinking? Right? It's not magic. It's not mind reading. You learn what they're thinking by asking questions. Right. We won't get into the role playing tonight because we are kind of on our time at this point. But any questions at this point? Did we open your eyes? Is there anything new? Is there
Technique
Great,
on
yes.
the closed persons sitting in your presentation, they're just sitting like this.
right?
Tell me how you solve that.
Especially if it's a committee room, I call that the saboteur. There's always a saboteur in the room. Thank you for bringing that up because I don't like you guys, right?
Nobody does.
But actually, I put in my responsibility, right? My responsibility is to convince the saboteur to buy it. I first try to find out what their influence is. There are 10 people in this room. If Susan is 51% of the decision, I've got some work to do here, right? And in many cases, I'm fortunate that I have a product that you have to hold and touch and feel. I will bring it to them first and foremost and get them involved. And how does that work? Does that work nice for you? Do you see how easy it is? So I pull them right out, right? I really do. And I'm very bold and brave about that, but I do it in a very subtle way. Since you're right here, I'd like you to play with this a little bit. Can you see how easy it is? Now, here's the deal. This person could have just purchased 100,000 feet of sheetrock, right? So look, think of a day in their life, right? It's not her fault that she's closed-minded. It's my fault. I've got to open it up. She can't help it. She's got 10,000 feet of sheetrock. You see my point? That doesn't make them a bad person. It's your job, just got a little harder. That's all. Now, you may find out that they're not very big on the food chain, but I still highly recommend you show them respect and address them, right? And find out if there are any doubts or concerns in the room. Well, I'm really worried that, I got 10,000 feet, of great. Then why don't we back off the order, let you use your sheetrock over time, and we can replace it with this, right? How's that for an alternative for you, right? Whatever her pain is, it could be what I'm wearing, right? I won't be able to change that, but you do want to uncover that. And some people are just, they might be brothers-in-law with your competition, right? Find that out, learn that stuff. But don't embarrass them. I wasn't trying to embarrass her by bringing it to her. I'm really trying to bring her into the participate with me. Does that make sense? The more participation, more enthusiasm we're gonna have. You don't always win those, but the saboteur, that's chapter 12. But you really want to try and figure out, if you're doing a group presentation, who is a saboteur, potential saboteur. And don't distract yourself trying to identify it. They'll surface, won't you? The close stance, looking down, reading their text messages, right? Not paying attention to it. And I don't claim to have all the answers for that, but that's a good one. That's a real good answer. And you do your best to address it. Yes.
I was gonna say, Kate has a question.
Kate.
Hi, my question is, how do you deal with people that are price conscious? So that like their problem is they're like the low price point player. And if you're not selling on price, how to handle that conundrum?
And I guess you're right. And that's going to change in any industry. Gosh almighty, nobody's more expensive than we are, right? STARC Systems is extremely expensive, and I probably shouldn't be recording that right now. It's very costly. And in your case, I guess you're probably addressing not necessarily the consumer, but the intermediary between you and the consumer. Are you talking about at the consumer level?
Well, sort of both. I think that this day and age, especially with inflation, price is becoming more and more of a problem.
Right. And I guess with Europe, and obviously being the high quality provider that you are, whether it be taste and quality and delectability, that you have to appeal to that component with yours, right? I mean, you are a high-end product, you taste better. And from a retailer standpoint, my guess is they can make more money with your product.
Well, I think for our whole group, like none of us are the best in terms of like automation in our, cohort. Like you're up against bigger companies that are more automated and can really dominate on price. So I guess my question is like when you're trying to solve a problem and sell in as a better option, but the customer keeps coming back on price, you turn the conversation in a different direction.
And one thing you'll get in that book, and I don't, nobody closes 100% of those, Kate, and I'm not trying to act like you do, but the pain associated with staying the same way has to cost more than the pain of switching. Does that make sense? In other words, you really want to hold up, without insulting anybody, the deficiencies associated with status quo versus the move and the change. And selling on price is the 99% of the reason people don't get orders, right? So that's not new, and you are right. You're dealing with people with much more operational efficiency, lower cost and volume. So what is the difference? At the end of the day, the biggest difference is you.
I would say your brand can differentiate you. If it's an aspirational product, you're selling expensive food items. In my experience, only the brand will overcome that differential. Think of the customers that will come to buy this expensive food item and what they'll spend in your store. Maybe as an example, like Stonewall Kitchen items are very expensive. You could buy a jam for $4 at Hannaford or $9 at Stonewall Kitchen. But the brand makes Stonewall Kitchen a great gift giving item, a little basket. So maybe that's the idea, the brand overcomes.
And there's also to aura, but if you're an early stage company, you don't have a brand.
Right.
Right? Who knows who you are? Kate happens to have a great brand. That's as solid as that is. Most of the Stark, they thought I was Tony Stark, right? They didn't know what our brand was.
It's worse things, I guess.
They didn't know who I really was, right? So, but that's a great question, and price is going to be the forever biggest objection to sales. So the important thing at best you can do is prepare as much as you can, line of questioning, and be prepared to uncover and deliver some pain for them staying in the right way, the same way that they're doing it now. And if yours is not a better solution, Well, some of us can still get that sale, but if yours is not a better solution, work on that and find out how you can present it as such, or uncover the pain as much. But cost is forever. There's a million different cost advantages over a million different ways to do it cheaper than the way I'm selling it now. And again, you've got a very unique circumstance. Okay, that's a great question because we're all running into that. None of us are the low cost provider of anything, are we? So if we're expecting to be, we're not going to start. I'm sure your custom folks are not, right? And they, what do they have to compare it to? Like, that's right. So, but excellent question. We can dig deeper, Kate, if you want on some. If you want to line of questioning, I'd be glad to chat.
Yeah, thank you. I always think like I wish I sold Ferraris because there never seems to be a lack of people who want to buy Ferraris at that luxury market. But
you got to find the right
sometimes,
ones, right?
yeah, I think price though in this market right now is unfortunately dominating a lot of sales conversations. So we're just curious because you are the sales guru on that aspect. Thank you.
We are all working against that, right? And these are once in a lifetime times too for all of us. I think on the end of this, many of us will develop a new skill and new capability and new discovery, just like you have to adapt. We had to adapt during COVID. We're very different the way we sold before COVID than during COVID. Technically post-COVID now, where gas is $5 a gallon. That changes everything. That changes your presentation. That changes their appetite for change, right? Maybe it increases their appetite for change. Are you able to take the current environment and turn it into your advantage somehow? Think through that. But if you're pitching it the way you were 6 months ago, that's a bad idea. Things are different.
What kind of homework do you do before a meeting?
Well, first of all, now LinkedIn has been amazing, right? For a personality profile. And of course, I'll do a little stalking on Facebook if necessary, or some social media, if there are any articles about them or something, depending on the level, it depends on what's available, right? But I also will try to do some homework with other constituents within the company, what the biggest challenges are. Now, if I am with Suffolk Construction, which is a $5 billion a year company, the containment component of their world is minimal, but it's a bigger part of that project manager's life than it is the CEO's life, right? Because so then I'll do a deep dive into what challenges they're running into the project and the job. I know I'm going to be able to come in and improve their life. I just know that, and I walk in that way. And I hope you feel that way too, that you're that convinced that what you've created is such a better solution than the way they're doing it now. You come across with complete confidence. And I don't mean arrogance. I'm talking about sincerity. People can read that, right? And the best way they know you're sincere is you learn about them and you ask them a line of questions about them and their challenges and their business. You talk about the freezers, right? Well, what's it like not having a, what if I sold a 10,000 square foot freezer, right? First thing I'd ask her, what's it like that you're dealing with now? How much does it cost you not to have freezer capacity? I could probably take her down a path that says she might think this freezer's free by the time I'm done, right? But it's a big pain for her. Did you hear that? I mean, my antennas go way up when I hear pain. It's natural. Like, I wish I was selling freezers right now.
Really happy. Yeah. Everybody.
But the best part is listening.
I do have a question for you. If you're in a fortunate position where your sales are increasing, there is a natural, I'm feeling instinct right now to mechanize the process of reorders. But I am worried about, right now, our method is highly personalized with high touch points of training. And I personally am making a lot of the deliveries of our dough, which was not totally intentional. Although shortly into it, I realized, oh, that is so necessary for my product because we are able to have face-to-face contact with our customers to understand their situation much, much better if we're not on site. But I will not be able to do that
Return
forever.
that, yeah.
And I'm trying to think about ways that we might make more mechanize that process. But I fear losing this.
Are you talking about order entry itself or the actual?
Even like new customers still for my company require a lot of hand holding, teaching, training. They're going to be, like people who maybe just bought a really expensive wood-fired oven, and it really helps them to have someone right there every week providing dough, being like, oh, I see this problem you're having. Try this. and then they're so grateful and then they're loyal. I'm not a
But you
I've
are,
studied
you're
sales.
part of the brand now.
Yeah, you are, good.
Yes,
The problem is
yes.
you've only got one of you to
How
sell.
do you-
Right,
And
yeah.
do you go with the strategy of just increasing a sales team that can do that, or do you go with?
I mean, clearly you have to, you're gonna have to scale. Without getting into the advisement of the operational efficiency of your company and all that at this point, because I'm clearly not qualified. But from the standpoint of, if you are gonna limit yourself to you, then you're only gonna get so large and you're gonna fry yourself out, right? So you don't want that to happen, right? I think we'll all agree with that. So we have to get a sense of, your high maintenance customers who need a lot of touch, and are they demanding it because they're paying more, or have they just not figured out how everything works yet? I mean, line of question is gonna fix all that, but you're ultimately gonna have to let go of that. I mean, I don't think anyone here is surprised to hear me say that, right? And I was the same way. Honestly, I had to touch every order that came in to start, because I brought them in here and it was, I hired inside salespeople. It was 6 months before I let them talk to the customer. I mean, same way, very passionate about it. But once I let go of that, then our sales even went greater, because I did not work on reorders,
I see.
because I worked on new business, right? And if reorders had a problem, I could certainly come back, circle around. No one's gonna fire you if your replacement has a bad day. I don't think so. I think you built some good equity and brand there, but we can talk about that.
I also think though, everybody in your company is a salesperson. I always think sometimes the most undervalued salespeople are the customer service people in certain industries, because they're the ones that are checking in, and they're the ones who are really the daily ambassador. I always feel like you want to hire that really well, because they can become those second tier. That's different for your industry, but
Yeah, you certainly got a high touch environment with you, and you didn't want your ambassadors to be people and capable, right? Clearly.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to
I
cut
like
that
that
umbilical
one.
cord, yeah.
I know I do.
Helpful stuff?
Yeah, I had a question about persistence. When do you know when it is enough?
There's emotional quotient, right? The emotional quotient. I am obviously by nature a persistent person, but I can read. There's a gift. It's not a gift, it's a knack. It's when you're done, right? And or lay groundwork for coming back, not next week, but maybe next month. But if you're not getting any buying signals to move to the next stage, and again, getting into sales stages is another whole class. But if you're not getting any signals to move to that next step, stop. Really, don't push it. You want them to be glad you're there. Now, even if you do that, nobody closes 100%. So don't put that goal on yourself either. We're all gonna hear a million no's. But there's a time to pull out, and there's some people skills that have to come out of you that says, this isn't going the way either one of us wanted to. So there's very little chance you're gonna build a long-term relationship with that being the case.
I used to hear often the quickest way to know sometimes is a sales technique. Because if you waste so much time and effort on something that's just not gonna go anywhere, when you really could have made another sale.
Make another appointment. You gotta learn to let go. But in your case, while you are spending all that time in that situation that's not gonna go forward, she's absolutely right. The opportunities missed somewhere else are very strong.
An interesting, I think, thing in software sales specifically is if you get to a quick no and leave it in a good place, especially if you're competing on price, they'll go buy the lower price thing, be disappointed with it, suffer with it for 6 to 12 months, and then they'll come back to you
And go, oh, shucks, right.
and say, oh, actually, so that expensive thing you were talking about, like, can we talk about that again?
Which
And
is
I
so
don't see, like,
expensive when they've gone through the
relationships
cost of
specifically.
choosing wrong, right?
Yeah.
So if your solution really is better, go through a mechanism and learn how to make sure they know that, as you just mentioned, so they don't go through that pain. But sometimes, as he mentioned, they have to suffer without you before they realize they need you.
Leave the door open for those people.
Always, yeah. If you lose an order, do not burn that bridge. A lot of the customers that we have clearly said no at first, more than clearly said no. Your how much more is the door, okay? You don't sit there and fight that.
Just a question about that. Surely if you add up all their other external costs, the drywall, the disposal fee, the labor, the cleanup of dust escaping, surely you came out better in the equation than their current solution.
I didn't get the sales without coming out better in the equation.
Yeah,
I'll
you
tell you
had
that.
to come out.
In addition, the soft stuff, right? This is green. This is made out of recyclable product. You don't dump it into dumps. So I've got all that. I got the looks going for us. I've got economics going for us, meaning, but you do have to explain the ROI over a given period of time. I got a lot of ammunition, but which of those ammunition is the most important to this person? I got to find out. She may be all recyclable all the time. We never throw anything away. Well, guess what? I'm going to hit on 90% of my presentation is going to be the greenness and how you're saving the world by using my product. If that's not an issue, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, right? Okay, we're talking obvious stuff. Helpful? Good? All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other, Rob, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Very
you
good.
so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Sasha. Yes.
He said thanks.
Oh, I
Oh,
was just saying thank you, sorry. Yeah.
okay. You're welcome, Sasha.
Next month of July, we have sled treks will be presenting for our Dear Go Speaker Series. So you all are invited to come and join us for that. Thank you so much, Chris. This was
You're
wonderful.
welcome. Thank you for having me, everybody.
Of
It
course, it was
was a
great.
lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah.